Yes, Maharaj.
Om Stapakaya cha Dharmasya Sarvadharmasvarupine Avataravrishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadmi Tayostritva Pranamami Muhu Namashri Etirajaya Vivekananda Suri Satchit Sukasvarupaya Swamini Tapaharini. The last time we had started discussing that Padmalochan in a village. There's an old temple which had not been visited for many years by devotees. And suddenly one heard the sound of conch shells coming from that direction. So people thought that the temple must have been cleaned up and then the image washed and everything is ready for worship, and they rushed. And they found there's nothing. The same temple with all kinds of bats, droppings all around, and only one Padmalochan was blowing the conchs in. Then you see, then they shouted, they used to call him Pado. Padalochan in a small abbreviated form, they used to call him Pado. Oh Pado, you have set up no image here. Within the shrine, oh fool, blowing the conch, you simply make confusion worse confounded. Huh? Shagbaji kolli ghol. Confusion worse confounded. Day and night, 11 bats scream there incessantly. So Shamksha says, there is no use in merely making a noise. If you want to establish the deity in the shrine of your heart, you must realize God. First of all, purify the mind. In the pure heart, God takes his seat. I think somewhere else to some devotee, Sri Ramakrishna says, see, if your heart is so impure, if it is full of dirt and squalor and all that, how do I go and sit there? I mean, how do I come there? He was asking. So again, this is what he says here. One cannot bring the holy image into the temple if the droppings of the bats are all around. The 11 bats are the 11 organs, 5 of action, 5 of perception, and the mind. Very beautiful. So Thakur says, people, first of all, invoke the deity, then give lectures to your heart's content. First of all, dive deep, plunge to the bottom and gather up the gems. Then you may do other things. But nobody wants to plunge. People are without spiritual discipline and prayer, without renunciation and dispassion. They learn a few words and immediately start to deliver lectures. It is difficult to teach others. Only if a man gets a command from God, after realizing him, is he entitled to teach. So it's a big note of caution for all of us, the so-called lecturers. Thakur says, first of all, one has to do intense sadhana to purify the mind. Only in the pure mind you can establish God. The mind is so, see, the point is the impure mind means one which is constantly in an agitated condition, totally disturbed. Such a mind, the reflection of God cannot be felt there. See, in the water, you can see the water is crystal clear. If it is not disturbed, if it is absolutely still, you can see the image. But if the water is completely disturbed, then you throw a stone there. Can you see any image? It's not possible. So, similarly, he says, one has to prepare one's mind thoroughly. One has to become pure. Then only one can establish God. And after realizing God, then you get a command or you get a mandate from God that you can teach others. Otherwise, elsewhere Thakur says, even if you teach and all, nobody will listen. They will listen and then go back and live their own way. If you really want to change people, if you want to change people's way of life, obviously you have to realize something. Otherwise, why will they follow you? They can also read from books. They don't need you. Anybody can read. Cannot anyone read this Kathamrit? But if you are a person of some realization, or at least if you're a great sadhaka, then others will try to emulate you, because he's not only talking or anything, he is also really pursuing or really practicing what he is preaching. That's important. Thus conversing, the master came to the west end of the veranda. Yam stood by his side. Sri repeated again and again that God cannot be realized without discrimination and renunciation. Vivek Vairagya ke bina. Without Viveka and Vairagya, you cannot realize God. Because Viveka is fundamental. What is Viveka? It's the discrimination between what is real and what is unreal. What is Nitya and what is Anitya. Doing this inquiry is Viveka. Because God is Nitya, God is eternal. All else is Anitya or perishable. So if your mind is already immersed in Anitya, how will you have any idea of Nitya? So when you discriminate, then you try to weed out Anitya from your life, then only it is possible to go Godward. And how do you do that? How do you take away all that? Through renunciation, through Vairagya. If we are so fond of the world, if we are so comfortable, if we like it so much, where is the need for God or anything else in our life? Only when we feel that virakti, only when we feel that dispassion, only when we feel that vairagya for what is in the world, what is attractive, what is stimulating to the senses, only when we try to move away from that, then only we can think of, getting this higher knowledge or God or something super conscious experience or whatever it is. So it's most important to have Viveka and Vairagya, without which it is not possible to realize God or go in that direction. Yam was extremely worried. He had married and was then a young man of 28, educated in college in the Western way. Having a sense of duty, he asked himself, do discrimination and dispassion mean giving up woman and gold? He was really at a loss to know what to do. Because when you come to a person like Sri Ramakrishna, you cannot just ignore him. Obviously, he's not like coming to any ordinary person. A person of such extraordinary saintly life, obviously, everyone who used to come there, they used to be very much, moved, motivated, influenced. And M was, after all, he was a very sincere person, no doubt. So, obviously, he was taking Sri Ramakrishna seriously. What is he saying? How to do this? He says Viveka and Vairagya. Does it mean giving up woman and gold? That means renouncing everything. Then what shall we do? Because he was not only young, he had wife and children and mother to take care of. What will happen to them? And there was constant fight in the house between his wife and mother. So he's asking Sri Ramakrishna, what should one do if one's wife says, you're neglecting me, I shall commit suicide? He literally asked his own question. If wife was threatening him, you're neglecting me, what shall I do? Then Thakur says in a serious tone, give up such a wife if she proves an obstacle in the way of spiritual life. Let her commit suicide or anything else she likes. The wife that hampers her husband's spiritual life is an ungodly wife. Sri Ramakrishna would never mince words. It is the same that is true of husbands also. Incidentally, it doesn't mean that he was saying only for wives. Wives includes husbands also. Anyone in the family of the two spouses, if one is totally against God and a spiritual life, Sri Ramakrishna's prescription was, give up such a person. Let anything happen. Nothing will happen. No one commits suicide for anyone else. And the people who keep on threatening never commit actually suicide. So Sri Ramakrishna knew. Somebody says that you should not be blackmailed into submission. You must stick to your path. You must be very clear. If necessary, you can give up. Immersed in deep thought, M stood leaning against the wall. Narendra and other devotees remained silent a few minutes. The master exchanged several words with them. See why M was leaning against the wall. He was in a real dilemma. What would happen if I give up? If I go away, they would all die of starvation. They have no one to take care. There is no other earning member in the house. What will happen if he gives up wife and family and goes away? He was simply at the same time, he could not ignore Sri Ramakrishna's words. Then suddenly, going to him, he whispered in his ear so that no one else hears, only he hears. But if a man has sincere love for God, and all come under his control, the king, wicked persons, and his wife, sincere love of God on the husband's part, may eventually help the wife to lead a spiritual life. He says if one is really sincere, devoted to God, everything will come in his favor. His wife, those days, no, the kings used to be very autocratic, even cruel. They would do anything they like. But he says everybody, wicked persons, even the king, all would come under his control or would help him. So, what Ramkrishna says, all we show as reason, external, these, that, they're all not the real reasons. Real reason is internal. The so-called external obstacles, it is not possible, that is not possible, this is not possible. It's all only our own making up. If one is sincere, if one practices sincerely, God will find the way. There are so many instances of, saints living that. There was one great lady, Chakubai in Maharashtra. In Maharashtra, there's that great tradition of, Varkari Sampradaya. I think in the particular months, in 3 or 4 months, they start from one place, from Alandi, and they go to Pandharpur. Slowly, it will become bigger and bigger and bigger crowd. Every year, they undertake this pilgrimage, constantly singing the name of Vittala's bhajans. It becomes a huge crowd. They just sleep wherever possible. Somebody feeds them on the way, but then the party continues. So this Sakuba, she was working as a maid in one house. She was so desirous of going, but the owner, the lady would scold, no, you don't have to go. What do you mean? So she was only aspiring, it was never happening. But she was so passionate. Every time when the party used to pass through their house, in front of their house, she would feel so sad, I'm not able to go. So that year, when the party came, she was so much overwhelmed with devotion. She simply abandoned all her work and left along with the party. She went all the way up to Pandharpur. She sang and sang and sang, and she was so joyful. It was unbelievable. It was her joy and her ecstasy and all that. Only, when she went to Pandharpur, she was so overwhelmed. There are two versions. One says that she actually went and merged with the Lord. The other version says she simply dropped dead out of excessive the devotion and that ecstasy. So they came back to tell this lady, your Sakuba is no more. When they came, she said, who said? My Sakuba has been working. She never went even for a single day. Vittala himself had assumed the form of Sakuba. When she went inside, Sakuba was not there. Then she understood the Vittala himself had assumed the body of Sakubai and doing all the household chores so that the real Sakubai could go and have his darshan in Pandharpur. So, our devotional history is full of many such great saints and others who had lived such extraordinary life and who had literally, God himself had assumed their duties and all that. So, these had a most soothing effect on M's worried mind. All the way he had been thinking, let her commit suicide, what can I do? Then he came to the master. The world is a terrible place indeed. Actually, although he is in samsara, so yes, now because his mind is turning towards spiritual life, there are millions, billions of people who are extremely happy with the world. But the rarest of the rare who have found some taste for spiritual life, they only feel that this place is a very difficult place to live. You have to please so many, compromises so many times, you have to adjust to so many other things. Master, this is the reason Chaitanya said to his companion Nityananda, listen brother, There is no hope of salvation for the worldly minded. Worldly minded does not mean that we are in the samsara only. In samsara also there is, Sri Ramakrishna again says there is a way of living. If you live like that, there's not a problem. But otherwise, if you're worldly completely immersed in that kind of duties and work and desires and so on, then life can be very difficult. On another occasion, the master had said to him privately, yes, there is no hope for worldly man who is not sincerely devoted to God. But he has nothing to fear if he remains the world after realizing God. Thakur have given many examples in many places how one should take out the butter from milk, etc. And then if you keep it in water, it will not get dissolved and so on. So he says, there is a way of living in the world. If you live that way, there is no fear. After all, everything is, where can you go? Everything is a samsara only. Whether it's a cave or a mountain or an ashrama or a house or a family, everything is a samsara. What is not there? Everything is samsarati iti samsara, that which keeps again and again coming. So wherever you are, ashrama is a bigger samsara. The household is a smaller samsara maybe. So everything is so, unless you live that way, wherever you are bound to be affected. Nor need a man have any fear whatsoever the world if he attains sincere devotion by practicing spiritual discipline now and then in solitude. So he says you can live with the world. If you have sincerely practiced devotion in solitude, then you would have had a taste of it. You know what is it. And then, you can always keep up that wherever you are, wherever you live, you can continue with that. And then, you'll always be, you will be in the world, but your mind will be deeply engaged with God. Then that's fine. Chaitanya had several householders among his devotees, but their householders in name only, for they lived unattached to the world. So they are only, Chaitanya was the only sannyasi there. All the others were all householders only, from the family only. But they all lived a very highly exalted life. They were never in any this thing, is it not? So there's nothing wrong in that. Only you must live properly. It was noon, the worship was over, food offerings have been made in the temple, the doors of the temple were shut. Sri Ramakrishna sat down for his meal, and Narendra and other devotees partook of the food offerings in the temple. From temple, the prasad came, so they all had nice prasad. Sunday, October 22nd, 1882. It was the day of Vijaya, the last day of the celebration of the worship of Durga, and the clay image is immersed in the water of a lake or river. After the puja is over, Dashami puja, then they take the Durga image and immerse it in water. And again next year they prepare afresh. About 9 o'clock in the morning, M was seated on the floor of the master's room at Dakshineshwar near Sri Ramakrishna, who was reclining on the small couch. Rakal was then living with the master, and Narendra and Bhavanath visited him frequently. Babaram had seen him only once or twice. Master, did you have any holiday during the Durga Puja? Yam, yes sir. I went to Keshav's house every day for the first 3 days of the worship. Master, is that so? I heard there a very interesting interpretation of the Durga Puja. Master, please tell me all about it. Yam, Keshav Sen held daily morning prayers in his house, lasting till 10 or 11. During his prayers, he gave the inner meaning of the Durga Puja. He said that everyone could realize that Divine Mother, that is, could install Mother Durga in the shrine of his heart, then Lakshmi, Saraswati, Kartika, Ganesh would come there of themselves. Lakshmi means wealth, Saraswati knowledge, Kartika strength, and Ganesh success. By